Hi and welcome. I'm Caroline Best of the Tao of Horsemanship. Welcome to Everything Horses and More, video library, and our free training channel on YouTube. And this is Lovey, my lovely 10-year-old thoroughbred mare. We are going to be talking about, in today's episode, the common mistakes that most beginner riders make. So today, our topic specifically for the common mistakes beginner riders make, part 2, is where should my leg be? Now, I'm going to be demonstrating in my dressage saddle as well, but right now I also want to be talking about, as a bareback rider, where your leg should be. And this is like the #1 secret to riding in balance and feeling secure. So Lovey and I are going to demonstrate, and then I'm also going to have an exercise that I'm going to have Sabrina, my camera lady, come out and help us with. But right now there are 3 main points we need to consider, be aware of when we are positioning our leg correctly. Now, I've mentioned in a couple of my previous videos on YouTube and in my video library that the history of the saddle was to keep the rider in place. Keep the rider in place. The history of the saddle was not for the comfort of the horse like it is today. It was predominantly to help the rider stay in place, especially English riding in the dressage saddle. Just think about the way you have the cantle in the back and the pommel in the front, and the way the seat of the saddle is tipped or not tipped depending on being a male or female pelvis. You also have your knee rolls, and the knee roll with the dressage saddle varies, and that is to keep your leg in place, the knee roll. Not to mention your stirrup leathers and the position of where your stirrup leathers are. So when we start to really understand that the saddle was to keep the rider in place, what happens when we're riding bareback? And the best way to learn to ride really is bareback, and with a really safe horse, obviously, because you have nothing to hang on to except your level of awareness and safety. You have nothing. So riding bareback keeps you humble. I always say that. It keeps you humble. I don't ride bareback to show off or be cocky that I can. I do it because it really makes me take less risks, makes me be safer, believe it or not. We take more risks when we think we have a saddle and a bit in our horse's mouth because we feel like we have more control and more safety that way. This really makes you slow down riding like this. Makes you go slow. And that's what my training is all about, teaching you the steps and the building blocks and always being safe. Knock on wood, that's why I don't wear a helmet. Not only do I feel safe with my horse, but I know my capability as a rider. And I don't ride unsafe horses. Not anymore. So the 3 main points that we need to consider and be aware of when we are thinking about the position of our leg is 1. So I'm going to come sideways and wake Lovey up. Now, when you're riding bareback, the position of your leg and your foot, which we'll get into in the next video, but the position of your leg is going to be a little bit different. And again, I don't have a saddle that is forcing my leg to be in a particular position. Okay, so my leg is pretty loose and it's hanging down and it's hanging very long, meaning I don't have it hiked up. Can you see the difference of just having my leg long? And I like to measure my leg against this black strip of leather here on the bareback pad, because this black strip of leather is exactly where Lovey's, it's positioned on her correctly, meaning it's exactly where Lovey's center of gravity is. And a horse's center of gravity is the heaviest spot on a horse. The heaviest point, where they are their heaviest. And it makes sense because look at Lovey's shoulder. look at her shoulder and how big it is. And so if I'm sitting behind, I'm just keeping her from rubbing on herself. Stay still. If I'm sitting behind her center of gravity, that means that I am not, well, she's got to get it right. So this is the first point I want to make. Where is your leg position when you get on your horse? Whether in a saddle, and I will be putting my saddle on, or riding bareback. Is it in front of you here, and are you tight? Can you feel contact and tension? So this would be in front. Now I'm gonna stretch my leg back, which is one of the exercises we'll be going over later, and roll it back, just like you would roll your shoulder back, so that it now is more lined up with this black leather strip. Now my leg is more underneath of me. And then it's really hard to have your leg behind you, but believe it or not, I've seen some riders where their leg is way behind and then it throws them off their balance. Now I'm on my pubic bone. I'm contracting my stomach muscle to hold myself from falling forward. So again, I have tension in my body, and I'm also leaning forward, which is the wrong thing when you're riding. You don't want to be on the horse's forehand. You always want to be back here and helping the horse develop the amount of propulsion or forward impulsion, forward movement through their hind end. So you want to always be coming from the hind end forward when you ride. Alrighty, so now you see me in my dressage saddle, and one of the things I want to talk about, which is going to be so against what you guys, even I was taught originally, is the length of our stirrup. I can remember that the length of your stirrup, you either could measure it with the point of your finger underneath the flap here, where it meets the saddle to your armpit, or that the stirrup had to hit your ankle. Well, I'm here to tell you that it needs to be a little bit longer. Now, this is not for rising trot or posting trot activities. And I don't teach that to begin with, because the way I develop horses and my riders is so that your horse's movement that you want to ride is developed before you ride it. Developed both in balance and collection, so that it's easier for you to ride that movement. And then I teach you how to learn how to ride that movement, so you sit all of it, just like the pros do. One of the things I'll expand in the next video is the foot position. But right now, you're also going to want it so that, you know, without expanding any more, because we'll save this for the continuing series here, you're going to want your foot just resting right in that stirrup. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I look forward to your comments. If anyone has anything to add or has a question about anything, please feel free to leave that in the comments area. Thank you. May you always be one with your horse, and stay tuned for our next video.